going on, everybody? Grim Repair here. Today I'm going to show you how to change out your steering wheel, fix your turn signals, and replace the ignition cylinder, which is the thing that the key goes into. That's what we're doing today. This one here is turning without a key, and that's no good. Tools you're going to need to do everything we did in this video: a voltmeter, a smaller Phillips, a larger Phillips, steering column spring compressor if you have a tilt wheel, a straight pick and a curved pick, snap ring pliers, 12mm 13/16 socket with a ratchet and extension, 5/8 1/2" T27 Torx bit, and this ratcheting flex head makes it really easy to get into tight spaces, an 8mm to remove the battery cable, and a T20. There'll be links down below to all the tools and parts used in the video. And a steering wheel puller. First thing we're going to do is disconnect the battery. Help reduce the risk of shorting something out. And it's hot out. My door is going to be open most of the time, and I don't want the battery to be dead from the dome light being on, so I'm just going to disconnect it. Also, you want to disconnect the battery, wait 10 minutes so that the airbag system can discharge and you don't risk blowing this up accidentally. After you've waited, the next thing we're going to do on this particular model is we're going to loosen the 4 bolts on the back side of this airbag. GM's been running this steering column from the early 70s all the way up to the mid 90s, probably a little bit later than that. You may or may not have an airbag. If you got an older car without an airbag, the center button here where the horn is usually just going to pull off. But the bolts that hold this particular airbag on are a T27. They're on the back here. And they don't come all the way out. They're kind of stuck in the steering wheel, but they loosen up and then the airbag can come off. Now loose. Other two are directly on the other side of the steering wheel. Sometimes it's easier to get to these if you can rotate the steering wheel. But I got this socket with the T27 on it, and it's real small. It gets into tight spaces, so I'm not going to have to do that. I like to keep the steering wheel straight. That way I can remember where everything goes and line it up easy. Most steering wheels have an indexing on them, but some of them don't, and you can put it back on in the wrong position. So you want to note what position your steering wheel's in, and straight up and down is the easiest to get right. So the time is currently 6:05. Just to note about how long this takes me, I've done this a lot of times, so you know, it might take you longer, you might be faster, but just gives you an idea. Hopefully this video helps you out, helps you go a little quicker. If it does, give it a like. We got all those loose. This should just pull right off. Don't pull on it too hard. You got to unplug it. You don't want to be getting any static discharge on this or anything like that. And when you do go to set it down like that in case something happens. You don't want it like this and then this goes flying off into the air. So just gonna set it down here, or actually I'm gonna set it somewhere where there's not a lot of static. Next we're gonna push in on this and rotate it counterclockwise. It's spring loaded, so you got to push in on it a little bit and just pulls right out. This socket, or this bolt, this nut here is a 13/16. And I like to keep everything in order, and there's enough room on the dash to do that with all the fittings we're going to use. Put that one here. Next we're going to have to get our steering wheel puller. You can't just pull this off. And you want to use a puller that looks like this, the two arms. And on this particular one, we're going to have to thread into these holes right here. The threads on my steering wheel here feel a little bit damaged, but it's this coarse threaded smaller bolt that came with the puller kit. All right, the socket size on this is a 5/8, and these are a 1/2 inch. Just gonna put it like this. Thread both of these bolts in there. And you can see how badly bent this one is. It'd be nice if that was not the case, but it's what I got. I think it's gonna work. Don't go too far in or you're gonna damage the clock spring with these. Just get them enough in there so they have something to grab onto. And that's probably good. Want them to both be equally tight so that the puller is pulling evenly. There we go. And now we're going to tighten this center one down with 5/8. And it's off. We're going to guide this airbag wire out. Set this aside. Now we've got a snap ring in there. Not sure if you can see it. So we're going to take our snap ring pliers. Put the pick underneath of it so that I can kind of pull it away from that ridge that it's in. Got another pick here. Just kind of guide it off of there. Don't pry against the clock spring. Just pull it out. There we go. It's out. And this airbag clock spring should just pop out. And I think mine is actually bad. You don't want to rotate this because it's indexed. You want to keep it where it is. It can only turn so far in either direction. Now we have a hog ring down in there around the, I don't know what this is called, but it's down in there. And it's spring loaded, so we need a compressor. If you have a tilt wheel, you're going to need one of these compressor tools. Looks like this. And I'll show you how to use it. It's got two attachments here. You're going to figure out which one fits. And that one fits mine. And we need to compress this down to take the tension off of that hog ring so we can pry it out. And try not to bend it too bad. You want to kind of walk it off and around the groove that it's in. If you do bend it, you can usually straighten it out. And we're going to use the small hoop. I'm just going to put that through there and thread it into this. All right, and now we're going to tighten this nut down, and that's going to push it in. Go get a wrench for that. All right, and this nut is a 12 millimeter. You're not going to go crazy tight, but you can see that it's moving that spring down and taking the tension off of that hog ring. Next, we're going to rotate this hog ring to where you can see the opening, and it's right here. I'm going to take the pick, slide it underneath of it, take the curve picked, and pull it off. Then I'm going to put the other pick on the back side of it so it can't fall back into that groove. And I'm just going to keep walking it out of there. it's out, and it might be more or less difficult than that. There's a second groove here that this can get caught on, so you want to be aware of that. Try to get over it. If you're not, you're gonna have to just do what we just did over again, which isn't a super big deal. There we go. All right. Oop, glove is stuck, and it's out. Now we're gonna loosen this. We can pull it all apart. And I'll show you how to test your clock spring, see if it's bad. Since we got it out, we can do that. Next time I'm at the junkyard, if I find a good one, I'll pick it up. All right, that tool's off. We're gonna need that for the reinstall. We will not need the steering wheel puller for the reinstall. I'm gonna set that down line here, right there. Now you wanna note that that white thing sticking out of here is up here where our horn button goes. And we're just gonna pull this out. And you can buy these in the help aisle at the auto parts store. This plastic cam here, this is what turns your turn signals on and off. And electricity flows through this for the horn. So if you're having problems with either of those things, and you wanna look at it too, sometimes they crack. I'm gonna set that back up there, the way that we pulled it out, just kinda like that. Next we have a spring here. This spring is only in here if you have a tilt wheel. And you only have to use that compressor tool if you have a tilt wheel. So these springs here hit that cam on that plastic piece, and they cancel your turn signals. If you want to look at all this here, these are part of your turn signal circuit. A turn signal switch is this whole thing here. It comes out and you kind of have to fish the wires down in there. But you know, just inspect this stuff, make sure that it's working. This is your horn contact in here, it's spring loaded, rides on that cam. But you can kind of see the action here. The switch for the turn signals is actually happening here, and then when you turn the wheel, it hits these springs and shuts it off. But now we're going to take a Phillips screwdriver. We're going to loosen this screw here that holds the turn signal lever to the switch mechanism, and try not to knock it loose. Just want to set that up there. Next, we're going to remove the screw that goes through the hazard switch on the side here. And this screwdriver is too big, so I'm going to go get another one. I'm going to loosen the hazard switch here. Phillips screwdriver, the one that's a little bit smaller than the other, and it just pulls out. And it's spring loaded, so don't let it shoot off on you. Set that up there. Now there's a couple screws in here. There's one there, and one under this lever here. We're going to loosen those. We're going to do this one first because we have to pivot it down to get to it. Pop it back up and take the other two out. And there are wires attached to this switch, so you're gonna have to pull it out kind of knowing that there's wires attached, and fish them up if you have to. They can kind of hold up on things sometimes. Three screws right there. All right, and we got this lever here. We're gonna pull it out and it pops in down in there. You're gonna have to put it back in there, but it is in the way. All right, so now we're just gonna grab this. The wires are down here that are attached to this, so you're gonna have to kind of pull up on it. We're not having to pull this out all the way, but if you had a turn signal switch problem, you would pull this out and you have to fish those wires up. All right, now we have enough access to get to what we need to get to remove this, which is that Torx screw right there. Sometime in the mid 80s, they went from a little spring-loaded tab that used to stick out, and you'd push in on that tab and you'd have to either pick this lock, get a key or have a key, or you would need to drill it out in order to get this all out. But sometime in the mid 80s, they switched over to this other style that's held in with this bolt. I prefer this one because you can remove it without having the key. The other one, if you don't have a key and you can't pick this to get it to turn, you end up having to drill into it to get it to turn, and it's just a lot more work. It can go wrong. Once we get this turn signal switch moved out of the way, we're going to pull this here. What this does is it touches the when the key is in there, it kind of pops out, and so it knows, so that's what gives you your where are the keys? That's what gives you the buzzer that your keys are in the ignition. Sometimes they'll lose connection and you can bend them up a little bit to get them to make contact again. We're gonna turn the ignition, and then this thing here should just slide out. You wanna be careful with it. Just gonna hook it here and pull it out. That's what that looks like. It goes in like that. And now we can get to that Torx screw there that is holding this all in. I'm gonna put it back in the locked position so that it's easier for me to line everything up. That Torx screw down in there is a T20. There we go. Some of these cars came with an anti-theft system where there's a pellet in the key. On those cars, most of those systems have failed. A lot of them have been bypassed. If you do have one of those systems and you intend to keep it, or it still works, there's going to be two wires running from this cylinder. They're in an orange sleeve. They run down under the column. You're going to have to unplug that and fish it out. And if you want to put that kind of system back in there and you don't want to bypass it, you're going to have to fish them back through. What I would do if I was going to fish it back through is pull it out here and cut the wires. That way I have something to tie the new ones onto, and that kind of helps you pull it back down and through. Same thing with the turn signal system. Leave one of these wires in here so you can pull it back down and through. All right, we've got our ignition cylinder out of there. The Torx screw just lines up in there and holds this into the column. Some of the older setups, there was a little spring-loaded pop-out thing here, and in order to release this, you'd have to have this turned and have a key or something, and it would pop out when you compressed that. So if you did have a VAT system and you weren't planning on installing it again because you bypassed it, then you're going to want to order a key cylinder from the same year or around the same year from like a truck or something that doesn't have that system. That way you can save a little bit of money if you're not going to be using it. All right, so now we've got the key in there and we're going to just slide it in with this little opening here facing down where that Torx screw was. And we're going to test it out. This is no longer turning without a key, so we know that was our issue. And it turns when the key is in there, so we can go ahead and put that Torx screw back in. Got it back in there, tighten it up. We're gonna put our key indicator back in that groove hole there. I think you're gonna have to turn the key to allow it to slide in. So do that. And now it slides back down. Feels nice and crispy. Now we're gonna slide this turn signal switch back down in there. Get all the holes lined up. Put these 3 screws back in there. And the hazard switch screw as well. Get them all started before you tighten them all the way down. All right, so we've got that slid in. I'm gonna go down here and kind of pull on those turn signal wires so that I know that they're not getting kinked up down there. It's this harness here. Feels pretty good. This is our clock spring harness here, and I'm gonna show you how to test the clock spring after we get everything put back in almost, except for the airbag. All right, now we're gonna put our hazard switch screw back in. This works good. And we're gonna put this little lever back. It's kind of hard to show you on the camera, but it just slides into this groove here in this lever here. And then we're gonna lock it back into place there. Kind of hold it into place while you tighten this down. All right, and since we got this open, I'm gonna spray it with some white lithium grease. That's what's in here now. It'll make this all work a little bit smoother. And now that we're at this point, I can show you how to test the clock spring. It's pretty easy. All you're gonna need is a voltmeter. And there should be continuity between both of these wires and both of the ones under the dash inside of that yellow harness. So we put it on continuity. Make sure that it's got a good connection with the probes. We're gonna go under here, pull this plug, put one on this end, and then one on the end of the clock spring. All right, that wire's good. At least in this position of the steering wheel, it's good. I'm gonna go to the other one. That wire's good. And you wanna make sure you don't have a short where they're both touching. Oh, well, we got a short here. This clock spring is shorted out in there somewhere and it's bad. And that's how you test the clock spring. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably cut this wire just to get it out of the way since I'm not gonna be able to use it, but I am gonna leave it up here so that I have something to tie into when I wanna install the new one. And I can use it to pull the wiring back down through the column. All right, now that we got everything in there, connected and working, except for this, we're gonna cut this right about here. All right, put the spring down there. Slide this on. Slide your hog ring on. Put the compressing tool on. Take your 12mm, tighten this nut, and we're going to compress it down until it goes past the second groove down there on the shaft. Just a little bit past, right about there. And we're going to slide down the hog ring. We got stuck in the first groove, so we're gonna pop it out. There we go. Go a little bit tighter. There we go, I saw it move. It is down in that groove. All right, now we're gonna release the compressing tool. And since we don't have the clock spring to put back on there, we're pretty much done in the column. But if you were going to put the clock spring back on, you'd need to slide it in there, put your snap ring back on, and put it to that first groove right in there. Then you're going to put your steering wheel on. In my case, I'm switching it out for this one here, since I knew I had an airbag light on anyway. And this steering wheel here does not look like it has an index, so you want to make sure you're getting it on in the right position. Mine was just a little bit off-centered like that. But I'm going to line up where the horn goes, which is right there. I'm going to take this nut, tighten it back down. You can see everything's lining up pretty good. Color is a little bit off, but it's a nicer wheel. It feels better in your hand. I think I'm gonna like it. I'm just gonna tighten it down. There we go. Now we're going to take this wire here, slide it down into that hole there, push it, and turn it clockwise. There we go. And this is just going to pop back in there. We're going to one more time put our keys in. Make sure everything's moving. We're gonna hook our battery back up and make sure that the horn works. Make sure everything works, your turn signals, your hazard lights. It's currently 6:54. Got it done in a little under an hour. And that's it. High five, you did it. Thanks for watching.